Millionaire comes home to find wife beating disabled daughter. What happens next? Get up, you useless child. Clean it again until it shines. Her voice sliced through the marble hallway like a whip. Behind the locked bathroom door, a little girl's sobs echoed, soft and broken. And just a few steps away, her father, a billionaire, returning home, early froze, realizing that the sound wasn't just crying, it was fear. Real fear. In a house of wealth and silence, he was about to open the door that would shatter everything he thought he knew about love, family, and trust. What would you have done in his place? Welcome to Emotional Echoes, a channel where emotions come alive and every story leaves a lasting echo in your heart. Please subscribe to Emotional Echoes channel. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so more souls can feel these stories. Stay with my video till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far this story spreads. Now, let me tell you this story. Ethan Monroe was the kind of man people admired from afar. A self-made billionaire in the tech world, known for his calm discipline and the perfect order of his life. But behind that success was a home too quiet, a daughter too obedient, and a father too sure that silence meant peace. That afternoon, when he stepped through the glass doors of his Malibu mansion, he expected the faint sound of cartoons or his daughter's laughter echoing down the hall. Instead, the house greeted him with a stillness so complete it felt staged. Then, faintly, from upstairs, came the steady drip of water, and a sound that stopped his breath, a small, broken cry. He froze on the stairs. His first thought was that he'd misheard. Maybe the housekeeper had dropped something, or Lily was just playing. He told himself it couldn't be what he thought. It couldn't be fear. But the sound that followed, the choked sob of a child begging softly, stripped that lie bare. He climbed the marble steps, each one colder than the last. Then came a voice, sharp and cruel, slicing through the air. You made a mess again, didn't you? How hard is it to follow simple instructions? Another voice trembled in reply, fragile as glass. I'm sorry. I'll clean it again. Mommy Veronica, please don't be mad. Ethan's chest tightened. Those words didn't belong in his home. They belonged in a nightmare. He stopped outside the bathroom, his hand hovering over the door handle, heart pounding in disbelief. He wanted to turn away, to believe there was some explanation waiting that made sense. But when he heard the sound of water splashing, followed by a sharp gasp of pain, something in him broke. He pushed the door open, and the world he thought he knew shattered. Lily, his 7-year-old daughter, was on the bathroom floor, knees soaked, scrubbing the toilet with trembling hands. Her small crutch lay broken beside her, soap bubbles streaking across the cold tile. Above her stood Veronica, elegant, flawless, dressed in white silk and wearing yellow gloves like some twisted parody of purity. At first, Veronica's voice was smooth, almost sing-song. You have to make it shine. Darling, we can't have dirt in Daddy's perfect house. Can we? But when Lily's trembling hand slipped and splashed water onto Veronica's dress, her tone snapped. The sweetness evaporated, replaced by fury. Look what you did. You ruined it again. Lily's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll fix it, please. Veronica's eyes hardened. You never learn. You think crying will make me forgive you. Then, before Ethan could move, Veronica grabbed Lily's wrist, forcing the rag back into her hand. Scrub until it shines. The girl whimpered and tried to obey, her arm shaking so badly The cloth slipped again. That's when Veronica's patience broke. Her voice rose to a sharp edge. Pathetic. She shoved the child backward. The motion quick and cruel. Lily's small body hit the wet tile with a dull thud that echoed in Ethan's bones. He lunged forward without thinking. "What the hell are you doing?" Veronica spun around, startled, but quickly composed herself. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, breath ragged. As the scene sank in, Lily's tiny frame curled on the floor, her knees bleeding from the fall, and Veronica, his wife, standing over her with that same blank, beautiful mask. "It's not what it looks like," she said smoothly, slipping the gloves off. "She needs to learn discipline. Ethan, you spoil her. She has to know responsibility." But Ethan couldn't hear her anymore. His world had narrowed to the trembling weight of his daughter as he lifted her off the floor. Her wet clothes clung to him. Her breath came in hiccups. "Daddy, I'm sorry. I tried to make it clean." The words hollowed him out. She wasn't afraid of pain. She was afraid of disappointing him. She thought this was her fault. Ethan looked up at Veronica. There was no guilt on her face, no fear, only annoyance, as if he had interrupted her routine. In that moment, he saw her clearly for the first time. The woman he had brought into their lives wasn't a mother. She was a mask with cruelty beneath. He carried Lily out of the bathroom, the sound of dripping water following him down the hall like an accusation. Each step echoed against the marble floor, heavy, slow, full of things he could never unsee. His daughter's small hands clutched at his shirt as if he were the last safe place in the world. Ethan said nothing, because he finally understood that the peace he thought he had built was never peace at all. It was silence, and inside that silence, something had been breaking for far too long. The silence after the bathroom incident pressed on the house like fog. Ethan carried Lily to her room, his hands shaking as he tried to steady her breathing. The little girl clung to him like a bird that had forgotten what safety felt like. He sat on the edge of her bed, wrapped her in a towel, and brushed the damp strands of hair from her forehead. Every time the faint echo of heels sounded from downstairs, her shoulders tensed and her small body shuddered. He whispered that everything was okay now, that Daddy was here, but she didn't seem to believe him. Her wide eyes kept flicking toward the door, waiting for it to open again. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely more than a breath. "Mommy Veronica said Mommy Emma was weak. That weak people don't get to stay in happy homes. She said, if I make mistakes, you'll send me away." Ethan froze. He had never said anything like that. Those words didn't come from him. They came from a place colder than discipline. He asked when Veronica told her that. Lily hesitated, chewing her lip as if afraid to say it. She said it happened often, when she dropped things, when she walked too slow, when the guests came, and Veronica said she needed to remember she was lucky to be here at all. Veronica would kneel down, stroke her hair, and whisper that Daddy only kept her because he pitied her, that one day he might want a real family again. Ethan's throat tightened. He tried to keep his face calm, but guilt spread like acid under his skin. He told himself he would have noticed, that he couldn't have missed something this cruel. But then Lily whispered again, almost apologizing. "I'm sorry for crying. I always cry too much. I make things worse." He held her hand, saying she had nothing to be sorry for, but she shook her head hard. "Mommy Veronica says, sorry is the only thing I'm good at." The words hit him harder than any insult ever could. He felt his chest ache, not with anger, but with shame. He had built this perfect life, all glass and light, while his daughter learned to apologize for existing inside it. He had been blind to the cost of his own comfort. When Veronica finally appeared in the doorway, she looked immaculate as always. The silk dress, the careful hair, the perfume that seemed to erase the smell of bleach and fear. She leaned against the frame, smiling like the wife from a magazine. You shouldn't let her manipulate you. Ethan, kids learn fast. You'll end up raising a little actress. Ethan rose slowly, his voice quiet but firm. She's not manipulating anyone. She's terrified. Veronica sighed, crossing her arms. You always make things so dramatic. She needs guidance. Rules. You think love fixes everything, but it doesn't. Sometimes, love just spoils what's already broken. He looked at her and felt the slow burn of disbelief turning into rage. You call that guidance? Making her scrub floors when she can barely walk. Veronica tilted her head slightly, smiling, her tone suddenly soft, almost pitying. You have to understand. Ethan, Emma left you with a lot to handle. I'm the only one who actually helps you manage what she left behind. The sentence slid through the air like a knife wrapped in silk. Ethan stared at her, realizing how calculated her sweetness was. Every kind word was a leash. Every soft tone, another way to make cruelty sound reasonable. He said quietly that Lily was not something to manage. She was a child, his child. Veronica's smile thinned, though her voice stayed gentle. And yet, she's the one thing that keeps you tied to the past. I'm just trying to help you move forward. Her words felt rehearsed, polished by months of pretending. He could see now that she didn't just despise Emma, she resented what Emma still meant to him. That resentment had nowhere to go but down, onto a child, too small to fight back. Lily stirred beside him, eyes fluttering open. She whispered for them not to fight, said she'd be better, that she could clean faster and quieter if that made things okay. Ethan's heart cracked again. He knelt beside her, took her tiny hand, and said she never had to clean anything again, that her job was to be a child, not to earn love by suffering for it. When he looked back, Veronica was watching him with that detached amusement she used when she thought she was winning. He saw no love in her, only the satisfaction of control. Then she smiled faintly, turned, and walked down the hall, her heels tapping like a metronome, marking the rhythm of their broken home. Ethan stayed there long after she left, his hand still resting on Lily's trembling back. The air in the room felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The house was beautiful. Yes, the kind of place people envied. But beauty meant nothing when it hid something rotten underneath. As Lily drifted into sleep, still gripping his sleeve, even in her dreams, Ethan stared into the dim light and finally admitted the truth to himself. He hadn't married a partner. He had invited a shadow into their lives. And now, that shadow was standing freely in his hallway, while the only real light left was the child who feared her own voice. By morning, the promise Ethan made beside Lily's bed had turned into quiet determination. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his daughter on that wet tile floor, shaking, apologizing, afraid of the wrong person. He told himself he needed facts. Not anger, but the line between them was blurring fast. He started with the bathroom. The air still smelled of bleach and something older, the kind of fear that clings. He forced himself to look, to really see what comfort had once taught him to ignore. When he ran his fingers along the inside of the door, he felt them tiny ridges, uneven and desperate. Scratches, not from the hinges, not random. A small hand had clawed at the wood near the latch, over and over, trying to open it. His throat went dry. He crouched closer and noticed the screws on the lock. They didn't match the hardware in the rest of the house. Newer, shinier. Someone had replaced them recently. He looked down and saw faint arcs on the tile, the kind made by a crutch sliding again and again in the same spot. This wasn't a single outburst. It was a pattern, a routine, a ritual of punishment disguised as teaching. When he stepped into Lily's room, she was sitting upright, already dressed, though it was barely sunrise. Her hair was brushed too carefully. Her posture, too, still like a child trying to look good before someone demanded it. She flinched when she heard his footsteps, then forced a smile as if to erase it. He sat down beside her and kept his voice soft. "Nothing you say will make me love you less." Lily hesitated, twisting her fingers. Then she asked if he was angry about the mess yesterday. He said no. He was only angry at himself for not seeing sooner. She looked at the wall, her voice small. "Mommy Veronica says the bathroom is for people who make her angry." He felt his pulse quicken. How often does that happen? She started counting on her fingers, then stopped halfway through, like counting felt wrong. More when guests come. More when you're away, because the house has to look perfect, and I have to be quiet. Tears welled up as she added, "If I cry, she makes me start over. She says tears make the floor dirty." Ethan's jaw locked, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. He wanted to grab the phone, to scream, to tear the house apart. But the sight of her trembling hands stopped him. She needed calm, not fire. He placed a hand over hers. "That's not going to happen anymore. Lily, not ever again. Bathrooms are for washing hands, not for punishment." She blinked at him, as if trying to decide whether she was allowed to believe that. When she finally drifted into sleep, clutching the edge of his sleeve, Ethan stepped into his office and stared at his phone for a long time. He didn't want to make the call. He didn't want to drag everything he feared into the light. But silence had already cost him too much. He called Lucas Reed, an old friend, a private investigator who had helped him years ago during a corporate dispute. Lucas's voice was steady, practical, the kind of voice that belonged to people who cleaned up messes for a living. Ethan said he needed someone to look into Veronica Hastings. Discreetly, Lucas asked what kind of look. Ethan hesitated, then said, "The kind that tells me who she really is. I don't care how deep you have to go." A few hours later, Lucas called back. His voice had a weight to it now. "Hastings isn't her real name. She's changed identities before. The name Veronica Black shows up, linked to a youth care facility in Illinois, shut down for multiple child welfare complaints. Another alias connects her to a private caregiving agency in Nevada that closed during a misconduct investigation." Ethan gripped the phone harder. His chest felt hollow. Lucas kept going. Something about forged records, missing employment files. Excessive discipline. The words blurred together. He wanted to hang up, to stop hearing. But silence had already cost him too much. He forced his voice to stay level. "Keep digging. Find everything." Lucas agreed, promising to move quietly. When the call ended, Ethan sat there staring at the dark screen, feeling as though the house itself was listening. That evening, Veronica found him standing by the window outside Lily's room. She walked up behind him, arms crossed, her tone almost playful. "You've been distant today, Ethan. Did I do something?" Her voice dripped concern, the kind that masks control. He didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the reflection in the glass, her standing behind him like a ghost in designer silk. She smiled faintly. "You worry too much. Lily just needs stronger guidance. Children test limits. It's what they do. He turned to face her. What you call guidance, I call cruelty. She laughed softly, stepping closer, as if soothing a client instead of a husband. You always see things emotionally. That's why Emma made you miserable. She was too soft, and she left you with a broken child and a pile of guilt. His hands tightened at his sides. Don't talk about her. Veronica tilted her head, smiling as though humoring him. Then stop keeping her alive in everything you do. Let the dead rest. Ethan, I'm the one who's still here, trying to make this house livable. For a second, neither spoke. He saw her reflection beside his flawless, confident, utterly hollow. He wondered how long he had mistaken control for care, obedience for love. When she finally walked away, her heels tapped across the marble like the tick of a clock counting down. Ethan stayed by the window, the house suddenly too still, too aware. Later that night, Lucas sent him a message with scanned documents and a single note. You were right. Attached were faded forms from the Illinois case, disciplinary reports, missing witness statements, and one line that made his blood run cold. Subject: enforces behavioral compliance through confinement. He put the phone down and pressed a trembling hand to his face. Every instinct in him screamed to protect, to act, to expose. But another part, the one that still remembered love, still wanted to believe he hadn't brought this evil home, hesitated. He looked toward Lily's room, the faint light of her night lamp glowing beneath the door. His mind replayed the sound of her small voice. Mommy Veronica says the bathroom is for people who make her angry. Ethan understood then that the home he had built wasn't a refuge. It was a battlefield, a quiet war fought behind locked doors and polite smiles. And the child he was sworn to protect had been fighting it alone. The days that followed blurred into a quiet storm inside Ethan's chest. The truth had begun to bleed through the walls of that perfect house, but he still couldn't bring himself to tear them down. He watched Veronica move through the mansion like a practiced actress, smiling for the staff, kissing his cheek, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had, especially the way Lily looked at mirrors, cautious, as if afraid they might show her something too real. One afternoon, while Ethan took a call in his office, Lily was in what used to be her mother's room. She had begun spending time there lately, drawn to the faint scent of lavender still clinging to the curtains. Veronica rarely entered that space. She called it the ghost room. Lily liked it for the opposite reason. It was the only place in the house that still felt kind. She was wiping dust from the mirror above the vanity when her cloth caught on something sharp behind the glass. It made a faint scraping sound. Curious. She reached around the frame and found a folded piece of paper wedged between the mirror and the wall. The edges were yellowed, the ink slightly faded, but the handwriting was delicate, familiar, motherly. She opened it carefully. Ethan heard her small voice call out from down the hall. "Daddy, I think Mommy left you something." He came running. When he saw the letter, his heart clenched. His name was written in Emma's handwriting, the same looping strokes he hadn't seen since the funeral. He sat beside Lily on the edge of the bed, unfolded the letter, and began to read. "Ethan, if you find this, it means my fears were real. I don't know how much time I have left before everything I've built disappears. You trust people too easily, especially those who know how to play the part of loyalty. Please listen to me. Veronica Black is not who she says she is." Ethan paused, feeling the air leave his lungs. Lily watched him with wide eyes as he continued reading. She went on. "I've noticed small things. Strange phone calls from numbers she claims are her friends. The mechanic said someone requested changes to my car's brake system before my last trip. When I asked, she laughed it off. But something in her smile made me cold inside. I'm writing this in case the next drive becomes my last. He couldn't read the rest aloud. His hands trembled. The letter continued in broken phrases about forged insurance documents, how Emma feared someone was changing her beneficiary information, how she felt watched even in her own home. The last lines were soft, like a whisper written in ink. If anything happens to me, protect Lily. And remember, mirrors never lie, only people do. Ethan's vision blurred. The words swam before his eyes, the paper damp in his grip. The mirror across the room reflected him, holding the letter, a man who once thought he controlled his world. Now, realizing he was only one step behind a predator, Lily reached out and touched his arm. "Daddy." Was Mommy scared? He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to steady. She was brave. "Sweetheart. Scared people run away. Brave ones try to warn us." He folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his jacket. Then he went to the safe in his study, where Veronica kept their important papers. His hands moved automatically, but his mind was somewhere else, replaying Emma's laugh, her touch, her quiet trust. Inside the safe, he found the life insurance folder. The beneficiary section had been altered, the handwriting forged, the signatures blurred, but still recognizable. Emma's name replaced with Veronica's. There was no room left for coincidence. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. It was Lucas. His tone was different now, tighter, cautious. "Ethan, I traced the driver from Emma's accident. He was a freelance mechanic named Danvers. 6 months before the crash, he received 2 wire transfers from an offshore account linked to Veronica Black." Ethan felt his chest constrict. His voice cracked slightly. So it wasn't just an accident. Lucas hesitated. "I'm sorry, Ethan. It never was." Ethan wanted to hang up. He wanted the world to stop for a second, but it didn't. The truth moved like gravity, relentless, pulling him down. He stared at the letter again, at Emma's final line about mirrors and lies. Behind him, the mirror above the desk reflected his face, pale, hollow, no longer the man he once recognized. Downstairs, Veronica's laughter echoed faintly. She was entertaining guests, playing the perfect hostess. The sound of her voice made his skin crawl. For the first time, he felt afraid, not just for Lily, but for the part of himself that had once loved this woman. He placed the letter on the desk and whispered to no one. "You killed her, didn't you? You took everything good and made it rot." He didn't realize Lily was at the door, listening. Her voice came soft and trembling. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" He turned to her, pulled her close, and said the only truth he had left. "We will be, because this ends now." That night, as he tucked her into bed, the letter lay under his pillow, the ink still faintly scented with lavender. Outside, the moonlight touched the mirror frame in Emma's old room, reflecting a fractured shimmer, not broken, but beginning to heal. The truth inside Ethan's chest had stopped burning and started to harden. What Emma's letter revealed wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated cruelty. 2 years deep. Now he knew, and knowing meant there was no more pretending. Agent Rachel Park sat across from him in his office 2 nights later, her files spread across the desk like a quiet map of war. She was calm, sharp-eyed, and spoke with the kind of precision people used when they'd seen too many ruined homes. She told him they needed Veronica's confession words that could hold in court, not just in grief, Ethan said he didn't want revenge. He wanted truth. And he wanted his daughter safe. They decided on Reflection Hall, Veronica's favorite gallery, a maze of glass and mirrored panels. She often called her cathedral of control. Rachel's team would be in place, hidden as gallery staff. Tiny recorders would be embedded behind several mirrors. Each reflection, a witness waiting to speak. Lily would stay in a secure room behind a two-way mirror, supervised but close enough to record her voice if needed. The plan was simple. Veronica would come for what she always wanted: money, power, and victory. Ethan would give her a stage big enough for her own arrogance to destroy her. When the day came, the gallery shimmered with reflections of itself, endless versions of the same lie. Ethan stood at the center, holding a slim folder marked with the fake $30 million transfer documents. Every surface caught his image, distorted it, repeated it, like a warning of what pride looks like when it finally breaks. Veronica entered right on time. Black dress, silver heels, calm smile. She moved through the mirrored hallway as if walking toward her coronation. Her eyes glided over Ethan, assessing, calculating, pretending to forgive. She said softly, as though they were still married, "You look tired." Ethan, guilt doesn't age well on you. He didn't rise to it. He just said, "I brought what you wanted. 30 million. Intraseable." Her lips curled slightly. "I always knew you'd pay for peace eventually." He watched her circle him, her image multiplying in every reflection, one smile turning into dozens. She picked up the folder, thumbed through the pages like a queen inspecting tribute. "You always loved to buy your way out of things, even out of the truth." Ethan kept his tone quiet, steady. "Truth doesn't cost money. Only lies do." Her eyes flickered. Then she laughed, low, cruel, like the sound of glass under a shoe. "Oh, Ethan, you think this is about money? It's about survival. Emma didn't survive because she was weak, and weakness is contagious." He felt his jaw tighten. "What did Emma ever do to you?" Veronica turned, her reflection slicing through the air in a dozen angles. She smiled into one of the mirrors. Watching herself, she took everything that should have been mine attention. Sympathy. The life I deserved. You call her an angel. But she was a parasite. He stepped closer. "And Lily, is that why you hurt her too?" "Because she reminded you of her mother." For a moment, her face changed. Something dark flickered there, not guilt, but recognition. She looked at one of the mirrors again, smoothing her hair. "Children, like her, are born to fail. You can't fix that. The strong have to teach them where they belong." Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. Behind the mirrors, Rachel's team stayed silent, recording every word. He lowered his voice. "You're saying you broke her to teach her?" Veronica gave a small shrug. "You call it breaking. I call it shaping. That's what makes me different from people like Emma or you. You cry. I survive." And then it happened. Veronica shifted slightly, and the mirror behind Ethan caught something, a faint, trembling reflection that didn't belong. Small hands, a recorder held tight, Lily's face, pale but determined, reflected in the silver. Veronica froze. Her eyes narrowed, trying to make sense of the image. Then her voice dropped, sharp and cold. "Who's there?" Ethan stayed still, behind the glass. Rachel whispered into her earpiece, "We've got it. Stay calm." Veronica turned toward the mirror, her tone rising, cracking at the edges. "You're spying on me, even now." Ethan said quietly. You wanted an audience. You just didn't expect it to be truth. Her breathing quickened. She moved closer to the mirror, staring at her own reflection and the faint outline of Lily behind it. You little brat. You think hiding makes you safe. She lunged forward, but her heel slipped on the polished floor. She hit the edge of the pedestal, sending the folder scattering across the ground. The mirrors around her rippled with motion, and then one cracked, a thin white line splitting her reflection in two. The shatter was not from rage, but chaos glass reacting to the violence of her collapse. Rachel's voice came through the comms, calm and firm. Move in. FBI agents emerged from both sides of the gallery, their reflections multiplying in the glass as they closed in. Veronica turned, panic mixing with fury. This is a setup. She screamed. You can't prove anything. Rachel stepped forward, badge visible. You proved it yourself. Mrs. Hastings. Every word was recorded. Veronica backed away, her hands trembling. In the fractured glass, 100 versions of her stared back, elegant, terrified, broken. One by one, those faces stopped looking like power. Ethan stood still as they cuffed her. His voice was quiet when he said, You hurt the only person who still believed love could fix something. That's all you ever destroyed. As they led her past him, she hissed, You'll never wash me out of that house. Ethan looked at her reflection one last time and said, It's not your reflection anymore. When she was gone, the silence in Reflection Hall felt heavy but clean. Rachel approached him, eyes steady. It's over, she said. He nodded, looking toward the two-way mirror where Lily's small face peeked out, tears glistening but proud. He placed his hand on the glass. She mirrored it from the other side, their palms meeting through the surface that once hid so much. You did it, sweetheart, he whispered. We both did. A faint sound came as another crack spread across the central mirror, a delicate fracture, almost gentle. The room held its breath. Truth had finally broken through. Outside, the evening light fell across the gallery floor. For the first time in years, Ethan felt air move freely in his chest. The reflection that looked back at him was not fractured anymore, just a man, a father, standing in the space between what was lost and what could finally begin again. 1 year after the night of the shattered mirror, the Malibu mansion no longer felt like a fortress. It breathed. The sound of fear had been replaced by laughter, small, union at first, but real. They called it the Butterfly House now, a place where children who had survived pain could begin again. Ethan walked slowly through the sunlit hallway, his pace unhurried, his steps soft. Every wall carried new life. Drawings of wings, notes from little hands, colors where silence once lived. He no longer dressed like a man trying to impress the world. He dressed like someone finally at peace with it. Lily had grown stronger. She could walk short distances without her crutch, now, each step steady, determined. She liked to say that walking felt like telling the earth, I'm still here. That morning, she was in the main room surrounded by children, some shy, some loud, all carrying invisible scars. Ethan watched as she held up a small mirror and a spray bottle. Her voice, once trembling, was now clear and light. She told the group she used to scrub a toilet because she thought she was dirty. But then she learned something. You can clean a mirror instead and see that you were never the dirt, only the reflection hidden behind it. The children listened quietly, hanging on every word. A boy with a cast on his arm raised his hand and asked if the mirror ever stays clean forever. Lily smiled and said, "No, it doesn't, but that's the point. You just keep cleaning because you're worth seeing clearly every day." Ethan felt his throat tighten. Pride and gratitude mixed inside him like sunlight through glass. He didn't clap or speak. He just stood there, breathing it in, this new version of his daughter, of their life. Outside, butterflies drifted above the garden where the old marble fountain once stood. Lily had helped plant the milkweed and lavender herself. She said butterflies were brave because they carried their change on their backs. Ethan often sat by that garden in the afternoons, watching the children chase color through the air. The same sea breeze that once rattled locked windows now swept through open doors. For the first time, quiet meant peace, not warning. He had learned small rituals, walking through each hallway before bed, touching every open door, whispering to himself, "No more locked rooms." Sometimes Lily joined him. They would pause in front of the biggest mirror in the house, the one saved from reflection hall. Its crack had been carefully sealed, but the faint line remained a scar-turned symbol. Lily would touch it and say softly, "That's where the truth got out." Ethan would smile and answer, "And that's how light got in." He rarely spoke of the past now, not because he wanted to forget, but because remembering no longer hurt. It reminded him of the cost of love, the kind that survives not by being perfect, but by staying when it's hardest to stay. One afternoon, as the children painted butterflies on glass jars, Lily walked over and handed him a small folded paper. "It's a wish list," she said. "I want to make a traveling mirror kit for kids who can't come here, so they can see themselves the way we do." He read it and felt something stir deep inside, the same ache that once broke him, now softened into hope. He nodded and said they would build it together. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, Ethan stood alone in the garden. The sky was turning gold and pink, the air carrying the faint hum of laughter through the windows. He closed his eyes and said a silent prayer, not asking for anything, just giving thanks. He thanked Emma for her warning, Rachel for her faith, and the child who turned fear into light. When he opened his eyes, he saw Lily standing by the doorway, watching him. She smiled the same way her mother used to, not wide, but deep, like someone who understood more than words could hold. He looked at her and finally knew he hadn't just saved his daughter. She had saved him too, from the silence behind a locked bathroom door to the laughter that now fills the butterfly house. Ethan and Lily's journey was one from darkness to light, from fear to freedom. This story reminds us that healing begins the moment we choose to listen, to protect, and to love without condition. Because sometimes saving a child's cry means saving your own soul. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below and tell me what part stayed in your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Emotional Echoes, where every story leaves a heartbeat behind. Thanks for listening.